Thank you very much, Sean. You look elegant this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, media, fellow citizens watching across television and radio stations across the country and on different platforms, I say good evening. On behalf of the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity, I welcome you to the Citizens Townhall on the 2026 Electoral Act. Tonight is not another policy conversation. Tonight is about power. It's not political power, it's not elite power, but citizens' power. Because the 2026 Electoral Act, it's not a document for lawyers alone. It's not a technical manual for election officials. It is a rule book that will determine whether my vote and your vote counts in the next elections. It's a document that will determine whether our democracy flourishes or it retreats. Fellow Nigerians, today makes it 361 days to the 2027 general elections. And as we prepare to vote, one question lingers on the mind of Nigerians, and that is, will the Electoral Act 2026 strengthen the sanctity of the ballot, or it is merely, a refining of the mechanics of contestation? Citizens are also asking, if we vote, will our vote truly determine the outcomes? So the 2026 Electoral Act does introduce provisions on voter accreditation, transmission of results, digital register for party primaries, timelines, and results management. In the same vein, the same law also includes, provisions that potentially undermine INEC's financial independence, and they also create loopholes for election manipulation. Now, these provisions are not abstract provisions of law. They shape who gets on the ballot, how results are transmitted, like Shenwu just mentioned previously. They also tell us how disputes are going to be resolved in the next elections. In other words, they shape democratic legitimacy. That is why this town hall matters. It is a platform not for partisan applause lines. It is not a space for the very usual rehearsed political rhetoric. It is a citizens' forum. So we are here to interrogate the law, to identify the gaps and its strengths and confront those gaps, to ask whether the safeguards in the law are sufficient, and to demand clarity in implementation. Because laws do not protect democracy by their mere existence. They protect democracy only when they are implemented with integrity, with public scrutiny and oversight. And as we approach 2027, the credibility of that election will not just be determined on election day. It will be determined by a few things. One, the quality of preparations, the transparency of results management, the professionalism of election officials, how political actors restrain themselves, but more importantly, the independence and the integrity, of our security agencies and the judiciary. And lastly, the vigilance of citizens is what will determine, the credibility of the next elections, because democracy is not self-executing. It requires guardians, and the citizens of this great country are the guardians that we need. So tonight, we invite you to engage boldly, ask hard questions, demand precision, and more importantly, reject ambiguity, and insist that electoral reform must serve the common good and not political convenience. But before we begin tonight, we as a network stand with citizens across Nigeria to make the following demands. The first, that the signed copies of the Electoral Act should be released without delay. Citizens deserve full access to the law that will govern their votes. Secondly, we call on the National Assembly to immediately review and amend sections of the Act that create loopholes and ambiguities capable of enabling election manipulation. And thirdly, but before I say that, just to acknowledge our amiable INEC chairman, thank you very much for coming. It's great to see INEC in the room. It shows that this INEC is interested in engaging with citizens. And so INEC should issue clear and ambiguous guidelines. And the process for developing these guidelines was more importantly be consultative. We should include political parties, civil society, citizens, and media all need to be involved in the drafting and the development of the primaries, of the guidelines, I beg your pardon. So, as we begin this conversation, please come to this conversation with an open mind. If the 2026 Electoral Act is to succeed, it must succeed to deepen trust and not dilute it. It must not close or create more loopholes, but it must block those loopholes that are capable of being exploited by political actors. It must strengthen accountability and shield impunity. And so for all of us and the civil society network of electoral integrity, I welcome you once again. And Sharon, let the show begin.
Thank you so much. Of course, let the show begin. Thank you so much, Samson. You and your colleagues at the network. If you're a member of the network, please, if you can stand, let Nigerians identify you. And can you please help me applaud those who belong to the network and civil society organization behind this initiative. You are speaking and working hard for our great nation, and our nation appreciates you. Thank you. Thank you. You may please have your seats. The people in this room are representing 200 million plus Nigerians who are not able to be in this room, but you are a voice for them tonight, and you are able to interrogate the process that will determine our nation's future for the next few years. So let's the conversation begin, and to put some background to the conversation, let's look at the laws, and let's look at some of the gray areas with me on the screen. Samson, you and your colleagues have identified 7 areas, top provisions in the Electoral Act, and it will help us to lay background to the conversation as we begin. The very first one is the issue of election funding timeline. This is a big one, isn't it, Samson?
It's indeed a big one, because one way to undermine elections is to starve the Electoral Commission of its funding. Now, the current act provides that INEC will receive its funding 6 months before an election, or not later than 6 months, or later 6 months before the elections. That's a deviation from the 2022 Act. The 2022 Act provides that INEC will get its funding 12 months before elections. So if INEC does not have all the money that it needs to conduct elections at least 1 year before the elections, it would definitely put the Electoral Commission under pressure. But this is one provision, the new provision in the Act.
And of course, we know what happened. It was 360 days in the last, at least 360 days in the last Electoral Act as amended, which allows for INEC to be able to get its funding. But in 2023, you know what happened. INEC couldn't get 100% of its funding.
In fact,
I wonder what really happened this time around, where we have to half that provision is now putting a lot of pressure. 2025, we're still considering 2026 budget.
Exactly. Now,
and the election process.
In fact, Chairman, 2 years after the 2023 elections, INEC informed Nigerians that it hadn't received all the monies for the 2023 elections. And that encurs on INEC's independence. And so if the elections are just 361 days, and in March, we haven't passed the 2026 budget, you're definitely going to put the Electoral Commission under pressure that could lead to logistical challenges. And we pray that does not happen.
I know INEC is on the first line charge funding in the federal budget, but again, INEC has always experienced some glitches when it comes to not only technical glitches, but funding glitches. Accepted IDs for voter registration. We now know specifically now what the law says. Birth certificate, Nigerian passport, and NIN, but this has been cancelled.
Absolutely. I think Nigerians should know that there are only 3 official documents that are acceptable during voter registration: your birth certificate, your Nigerian passport, and your national identity number. In other words, your namesake ID. I think this is a good provision, because we can't, as a country, not have a civil register of who we are. So I think it's great. Driver's license, other ID cards have been removed, but Nigerians should know that these are the only 3 documents that you can tender during voter registration. I pray that we get to a point when we have a national register, and once you turn 18, you just go to the polling unit and cast your vote. Or INEC can draw the voter register from the civil register. And I think that's where we're going to as a country. But this is one of the laudable provisions.
National Population Commission, the Nigerian Immigration Service, and NIMC. These are the agencies of government that are issuing these certificates or these IDs. So it's important that every Nigerian know where to run to or where to turn to in getting all of that done. Now, this is another addition to the provision of the law.
That's right.
Now you can download your voter card. You don't have to wait for your PVCs. Is that what the law is saying?
Well, that's what the law is saying, but there's need for clarity. But one of the things we celebrate is that this particular law provides that you can download your voter's card online. Previously, people couldn't vote at elections, not because they didn't show up to collect their PVCs, but due to administrative lapses on the part of INEC. And so you're disenfranchising people, even if their names on the voters register. So this provision would increase voter turnout, but also prevent against disenfranchisement. But there's a great need for INEC, in issuing its regulations to provide better clarity. Again, this is one of the big wins in the 2026 Electoral Act.
So for those who've just turned 18 and you probably just written JAMB and you know how you print your slip at those centers where you write the exam, it's pretty much close to how you can easily download your voter card and be able to print it out. That's an addition, but also we need to keep an eye, and sensitization has to be done a lot. Now, timeline for submission of candidates, a very, very big one. I know you're laughing. And there is a major worry as to how political parties will be able to meet up with this.
I think Nigerians should know that previously, the political parties had 180 days before the day of an election to submit their list of candidates. Now, that has been reduced to 120 days. Since we're going to be having the conversations with the parties, I would defer to that session and listen, to the parties, what they think. But what's important is that what the law now provides is that parties should submit their list of candidates 120 days before the date of an election.
Another provision here is the publication of candidate list by INEC. There is a reduction in the amended law 2026 about this.
Quite frankly, I don't understand the rationale behind this. There's a reason why the 2022 Act provides for 150 days. 5 months before the date of an election. It gives INEC sufficient time to deal with issues about logistics, print ballot papers. To have reduced this to 60 days will put INEC under immense pressure. These compressed timelines were just unnecessary. It's just sad that that is the case now. But what the lawmakers have done, and the president, by assenting to this bill, is reduce this to 60 days. So 60 days before the date of an election, INEC will publish the list of candidates. And I tell you, that's when INEC will start printing ballot paper. So there is some logistical implications. And I just wish that the lawmakers differed, to INEC when they were enacting this particular.
Since the day INEC was born, logistics has been an INEC disease. And it's not been able to resolve it.
But this is not going to worsen it, because there was a reason why it was 150 was introduced in the 2022 Act to give INEC sufficient time.
That's why the logistic problem of INEC.
That's why in 2023 we were able to print ballot papers and result sheets in Nigeria for the very first time since 1999. We've always produced our ballot papers and result sheets outside the country. But when INEC had sufficient time, it was able, to localize the production. But now, this, no doubt, will put INEC under immense pressure.
I wish I can consult my younger brother who is a medical doctor. Maybe he can help fix INEC major disease, which is logistics. I don't know how we're going to get around that. But, well, let's see how that goes. Electronic transmission of results. Transmission. This is a real issue that a lot of Nigerians, if you don't know anything about the issues around the Electoral Act amendment, a lot of Nigerians know transmission of result, which is a major issue. And that's why we saw the division in the National Assembly.
I think that some call this the elephant in the room. But I'd say that this was a missed opportunity for Nigeria. And this was a moment when our political leaders had the opportunity of writing their names in gold by giving Nigerians what they demand. I think the proviso in this particular provision is the problem, because it undermines, the whole concept of electoral electronic transmission of results and transparency. I just wished that the lawmakers eliminated that particular proviso. This is why we've made a call to them to commence the process of amending the Act and just delete that particular proviso. That way, as a country, we will maximize the utility of electronic transmission of results because it limits human interference. It makes the whole process open and transparent. If politicians are not scared, I see no reason why this was not really considered in its full breadth.
Well, we see how that goes. So, mode of primaries. This is where I cannot have an opinion in this, but
do you need a medical doctor for this?
I have a problem with this. You have a mode of primary. You added one in the last law. You are removing another one this time around. What sense does it make?
Well,
you are removing another one this time around. What sense does it make?
Well, I don't know. I'm still trying to make sense of this because what the lawmakers did is to eliminate indirect primaries. Now, you can argue that your direct primaries devolves power to the people. But I thought that one of the philosophy behind one of the provisions that parties should issue guidelines for direct primaries was to defer to the parties because it's an internal party affair. So on one hand, you say you're deferring to the parties to issue guidelines for direct primaries, but you're also conscripting them to only direct and consensus. I thought that this was, again, a missed opportunity, but they have their reasons.
Nothing would have happened if they left it.
It's good we have a session with party chairmen and leaders, so we'll wait to see what they have to say.
Thank you, Samson. The other one, which perhaps is the last, is a compulsory digital membership register. For this reason, a political party had come to meet INEC that they cannot take the timeline or the schedule of the election of 2026. And this is one of the major issues. Whether or not most of the political parties will be able to meet the 21 days ultimatum that has been given before their primaries.
I think the Nigerians need to know that the issue is not parties not meeting 21 days deadline. It's the fact that we dragged this amendment process too long, and then it now conflicts with the issue about time.
Our senators needed to rest. They went on recess because House of Reps, you need to give them kudos. Look, call out those who are at fault. House of Reps member, they did their job before they went on December break. But our senators cooled off.
I can see the chairman smiling.
Oh yeah, they cooled off and they came back in January and we started rushing.
No, quite frankly, there's nothing wrong with this provision. I think this is a very positive development. Why? Because it seeks to sanitize party membership within our political parties by providing this structure. The big challenge with this is the issue about time. You can clearly see most of the parties are struggling to now develop their digital register. Well, the law is the law. You must comply with the law, but note that you must submit your digital register with members, their names, their photographs, and their name 21 days, because there's a consequence. If you don't meet this condition, you'll be disqualified from fielding candidates in the next elections.
Thank you, Samson. I think
always
we come to the end of these particular analyses, which gives us an opportunity to look at the issues differently. Thank you so much, Samson.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
But don't forget, wherever you may be watching, at home, abroad, and on television, on your radio, if you're listening, you can be part and you can ask questions alongside the people that are in this room. For SMS and WhatsApp, the number to text or to send your voice note to is 070-777-21276. I take that again. The number for SMS and WhatsApp for you to get your questions in for this town hall is 070-777-21276. Wherever you may be, you can call us or text us and let us know your questions on this one. And this is the moment where we'll be hearing from the umpire, the brand new INEC chairman. He's conducted some elections, but he's still brand new in the face of so many Nigerians. Professor Joash Amupitan for his remark. Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, Okimbaloye. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers out there. I have the incredible pleasure of appearing this evening in an event that we take so highly because of its impact on voters' education and the ability to take through the Electoral Act that was enacted on the 18th day of February 2026, to take it from the A to Z of the Electoral Act, which has just been done by Okinbaloye and my good friend, DSamsonItodo of Yaga. Let me take this moment to commend the organizers of this program, the civil societies, because this is part of INEC responsibility, actually. So we really appreciate this advocacy. I recall some years ago, I was at George Washington University to discuss a topic that has to do with constitutionalism. And I discovered that every bad thing said in that conference was about Nigeria. They were talking about electoral fraud Nigeria, talking about 419 is Nigeria, talking about all form of vices. And I happened to be the only Nigerian there. So it was as if the ground should open and I should enter. But nonetheless, when it was my turn to speak, I used the opportunity to talk about Nigeria and to let people know that Nigeria, you have the best people in Nigeria, in the world. And again, you have, I don't know, some bad people. The worst. Somebody said the worst. And by the time I supported my argument with facts and figures, because there was a release then that Nigerians were the most happiest people in the world. Then everybody was, oh, we have to give this country a chance. I appreciate the review of the Electoral Act. INEC is the constitutional body that is charged with the responsibility of the conduct of election at all levels. When I say all levels, it also includes at the local level. We just conducted the FCT area council election, and we're also involved in the conduct of the state and the governorship election. We are also involved in the conduct of the presidential election as well as the National Assembly. Now, let me say that democracy and election for that matter, is the lifeblood of democracy. And according to Abraham Lincoln, the ballot is more powerful than the bullet. And also the ignorance of a voter is very inimical to the security of a nation. So that is why we cannot underscore the importance of the role of INEC as well as the civil society in guaranteeing a transparent and a credible election. Now let us talk about the new Electoral Act. You have gone through the Electoral Act from the beginning to the end, and we have looked at some of the contentious areas, especially in a country that is highly diverse. And then the landscape of the political landscape and the electoral landscape of Nigeria is very, very virulent. So therefore, what Nigeria needs is actually what I call a simple legislation, a simple language legislation, whereby it will be possible for every Nigerian to understand and appreciate the provisions of every section. INEC was involved in the process that produced the 2026 Electoral Act. The process started about 2 years ago, and a joint committee consisting of the members of the National Assembly, some civil society, as well as INEC was constituted. As at the time I was taking over, the work was almost concluded. But nonetheless, we still made some important provisions and recommendations in the new act. Now, even talking about the transmission of the results, you will notice that from the original provision that came out of the retreat from the National Assembly, it's not exactly what you have today. But when INEC came in, we talk of transmission should be mandatory. But let us be sincere and honest. The only problem that we had is how to define what we call real time. Let me take the FCT area council election that just took place. Now, there are 6 area councils in FCT. The results came out on time in 5 area councils. But in Kuje area council, we have 10 wards. And the result in one ward, Kabi ward, did not come until the following day, Sunday. Now, on Saturday, when we mobilize and send people to that ward, from Kuje town, Kabi ward is about 3.5 hours drive, and the terrain is very bad. So I was worried. When we sent our pool officers and security agencies to that ward, the moment they entered that place, we could not reach them. They were not accessible on phone, and nobody could speak to them until we had to send somebody on Saturday morning just to be sure that they were safe. Before we now got the result, they brought results to Kuje town, and then it was collated along the remaining 9 wards before the result could be declared. I don't see the issue of transmission as really a problem. I don't see the issue because from my little experience over 4 months now in INEC, the problem is not even network. The problem I have seen is the adequacy of the network we have. For instance, you expect that in a place like FCT, you should be able to transmit your results without any encumbrance. But we had a situation where it was impossible for us to have a real-time transmission of results, especially from Kabi ward on the following day. And in some of the wards, some results were transmitted. So, talking about logistics, I've said it often and often, that logistics, your election can be as good as your logistics. So where there's logistic failure, you know that you are beginning to fail. Before the election, we had meetings with various groups, including the media and the civil society organizations. And I stated very clearly that as far as the election is concerned, we should be able to determine what is a successful election. And a successful election is based on logistics. Number one, if you want to measure whether an election is successful, you have to determine whether the election started as advertised. And we advertised the election for 8:30. So if we're able to start the election at 8:30, and number two, if the election is peaceful, number three, if we're able to manage the result very well, that is result management, and then declaration of results, then you can say you have a successful election. As a regulatory body, we were determined to achieve all this. But nonetheless, we have to admit that there were some logistic issues. Some were purely human, which we are trying to address. And let me just appeal to Nigerians, because I have noticed now that what Nigerians desire is a perfect election. And INEC will strive as much as possible to give this country the best election. However, we may not be able to achieve 100% perfect election for now. But as far as electronic transmission of results is concerned, I said it before FCT Area Council, that we have the capacity to transmit the results, and that we're going to transmit the results. The only concern was real time. What is real time? For instance, if you use your app to make a transfer from your account, even in Abuja town, you are transferring 50,000 to Mr. B, and from your app, the amount has gone. But the person may not receive the alert until another 30 minutes, another hour, or even in the evening. So those are some of the things. And when you say it is real time, as soon as it is done, it must be received. So result management and logistics are two basic issues that from our own end, we're trying to see how best we're able to manage it very well, so as to enhance the transparency and credibility of the system.
Thank you so much, Prof. I really appreciate it. Can we please put our hands together for Professor Joash Amupitan? But we are looking for a member of INEC staff. His name is Glitch. It was being blamed for what happened in 2023. Do you know him? Have you identified him? And I hope he's not going to surface in 2027.
The glitch is eliminated. The glitch, by God's grace, will not surface in Nigeria. And when I even look at the proviso to Section 63 of the Electoral Act, during the last FCT election, apart from that delay, we didn't have any transmission failure. Meaning that it's just a proviso, a safety if it fails. And during my tenure, it will never fail. That is the determination.
Yeah.
If it fails, if it doesn't fail, then result. Even if it fails, the result must be transmitted. But the only problem is if it fails to do real-time transmission, as we had in that word, that is the major problem.
Right.
Now, addressing about the glitch, election now anywhere is about technology. But before you deploy any technology, it is important for you to test that technology very well. So my own audit of the 2023 election is to the effect that while the BVAS was tested within the states for Osun election, Ekiti election, however, when it came to the federal election, especially the presidential election, that now became interstate, it was not properly tested. So one of the things we are trying to do before the election, we're going to have a mock presidential election so that we are sure that this transmission across the state must not fail.
Thank you so much, Prof. So the guarantee, and I wish that you can look into the camera and promise Nigerians that under Professor Joash Amupitan, election of 2027 will be the best ever. Is that a promise that you can give us?
By the grace of God, election of 2027 will be the best election that Nigerians will have. Because Nigerians of 2023 is different from what you have in 2027. People are much more aware. And you know the correlation between election and development. Nobody is happy about the classification of Nigeria as an underdeveloped country. So we want a situation where our process will be able to guarantee the confidence and the legitimacy that people will want to see in their system. So by the time you have a transparent election and people begin to trust INEC and trust their leaders, then the country will move forward.
Thank you so much, Prof. You need a good luck handshake.
Thank you.
And I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Please, let's put the hands together again for Professor Joash Amupitan. What are the people on the street? What are they saying? Do they really know what this is all about? We're fighting for all Nigerians, but let's hear from the street. And these are the voices from the Nigerian street about this election and the new electoral law.
INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the 3 critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you are already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cbr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration CBR is ongoing. Start your registration online at cbr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office. Do not wait until the last minute. 3. Mobilize 10 people to vote. Democracy is a collective responsibility. Tell at least 10 friends or family members to prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your mobilization multiplies that voice. Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling units. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity.
Nigeria has gotten to that level where we should be able to transfer our election electronically. Today, you have networks in every part of this country. The POS is being used all over Nigeria. Why are you telling us that there is no network? So I think it's not going to work for us. I wish Joash will stand upright and do the right thing. Because with this first election he conducted, I think has brought down his reputation. I wish he would do the right thing. Also rescue himself there and do the right thing.
Nigeria need cooperation. In the sense, if things is not good, you will not debate on it. it is good. That's why they rally around and endorse it. So what we need, we want something that will help Nigeria, so that Nigeria will be settled down. Or this electoral something that they endorse now. In fact, there's nothing bad in it. There's nothing bad. So, and I believe if Nigeria can cooperate with it, so it's a good thing.
I think that Electoral Act is just a fast play on Nigerians. It's not really what's the mind of Nigeria, because Nigeria has grown beyond a level that we think that we can't transmit election directly. And there is no part of Nigeria that you can enter that there is no internet as we speak as of today. So for the country to wake up and say that the Electoral Act can be passed, cannot be handled electronically, it's not a goal, it's not an ideal. It's like taking the country backward instead of going forward, because we are growing up to become a developed country.
Whatever National Assembly did for new electoral reform is very fantastic, because when we monitor elections across before, we observe that some of the areas we must use manual. Without manual, that cannot work. So, as the National Assembly approved the manual electoral form, it is fantastic and the best for all. So that in the bush area whereby network cannot be, reached, the manual can work perfectly. So that you will bring Nigerian good result for the election.
The only thing I'm telling everybody that is going to, out there to cast his or her votes, once you finish your voting, you make sure you are there, that let the votes be counted and be recorded. Then you follow them to the collection center at the ward. At the collection center, you are not there to make trouble. You are there to observe what is going on, and you make sure that what was taken from your polling unit is what was entered in from ECHB, as we have already, seen. In this part of Nigeria, we don't have problem with the issue of, not entering what was recorded at the polling unit.
One of the things the Electoral Act advocates is direct primaries, so that people will start spending a lot of money in going to primaries in the political party. At the end of the day, few will of individuals are being done. So where people come in and give a consensus, give a consent to a particular candidate, it therefore minimizes spending. It therefore strengthens internal party politics. Because when people don't spend a lot of money buying delegates, going for consultation, doing or what not, there's room to accept a consensus candidate. And you see, one of the things the act will do is to strengthen internal politics.
INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the 3 critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you're already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration CVR is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office. Do not wait until the last minute. 3. Mobilize 10 people to vote. Democracy is a collective responsibility. Tell at least 10 friends or family members to prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your mobilization multiplies that voice. Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling units. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity. INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the 3 critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you are already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration (CVR) is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office. Do not wait until the last minute. 3. Mobilize 10 people to vote. Democracy is a collective responsibility. Tell at least 10 friends or family members to prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your mobilization multiplies that voice. Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling unit. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on this very important town hall meeting. Let's get the first session started. And this is going to be about understanding the Electoral Act of 2026. There's one man who has institutional understanding of how INEC works. He's a professor of political science. He's going to give us a few minutes of a pre-panel session conversation, and then I'll introduce the panel. Oh, let me do that right away. I have one man who's worked in engineer. Chidi Nwafo is a former INEC director of ICT. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
And also a very experienced INEC man who is a former director of legal, former director of public affairs at INEC, Mr. Oluwole Osaze. Former director of public affairs at INEC, Mr. Oluwole Osaze. Thank you so much indeed for coming. And also a very strong woman on the streets of Nigeria with Solidarity's son is Ms. Ene Obi, a former director of Action Aid and a former convener of Election Situation Room. Thank you so much indeed. The chair of the Electoral Affairs Committee in the House, Honorable Balogun, thank you so much indeed for coming. And Senator Victor Ume, a former national chairman of APUGA. Thanks so much indeed for coming today. And of course, my very good brother Ume, I'm going to introduce very well later on. But to give us the pre-session understanding is Professor Okechukwu Ebano. Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, Shehu. When the organizers asked me to give a keynote for 5 minutes, I was wondering what kind of keynote you give in 5 minutes. But having listened to Shehu and Samson, I can understand why they want me to speak for just 5 minutes, because I think they've already given the keynote. So what I will try to do is to add a few footnotes to what they have already told us. To start with, I think I should mention that between 2010 and 2016, the Electoral Act in Nigeria has been repealed and reenacted 3 times. And that excludes at least 2 extensive amendments. It took between 2012 and 2022 for the first repeal and reenact to happen. But it has taken just less than 4 years to do it again. Now, you may wonder why this is important. Why it is important is that we consistently tinker with the electoral legal framework, as if that holds all the answers to our electoral problems. But more importantly, I think that we also hand the process of amending the Act to politicians. The same people the Act is meant to regulate their behavior are the ones who take the lead in amending it. And I think that amendments and repeals of the law should be its medicine, not its daily bread. And what we have done is that we have, converted the amendments and repeals of our electoral laws not as a medicine for the law, but its daily bread. And the implication of that is that if you keep tinkering with the legal framework, you will probably end up with the kind of things we have seen, where amendments to the law are meant to serve primarily not the defense of the votes of citizens, but the calculations of politicians. And I will show in the 3 minutes I still have why I think so. But in terms of what has changed, which is the main thing I've been asked to talk about, I think Shehu and Samson have already walked us through those. But I think it's also important to mention that the problem is not necessarily with the amendment. It is the extent to which we are willing to honestly commit to the implementation of the law. And we have not been adept, we haven't been that good at doing so. And so if the custodians of the law, and particularly those who implement it, INEC essentially, but also other agencies, and those who interpreted the judiciary, if they decide to undermine the act, whatever amendment you have becomes essentially academic. And I'm hoping that this time around, we are going to turn this around. The only point I'm going to add in terms of the critical things that have changed in the Electoral Act is the ouster clause relating to political parties. The law presently provides that no court in Nigeria can entertain the matters related to the internal affairs of political parties. While on the one hand, I think that strengthens INEC as a body to now properly act as a regulator of political parties. I think that it almost brings up the specter, if you like, of military regimes when you had ouster clauses, in the law. The third point I would like to make as I begin to round up is about INEC itself. I think that whatever you have in the law, and of course I'm not going to leave this before I've spoken about transmission of results, because I think that a lot of people expect that. I think that there are still gaps and loopholes in the law. And it is unfortunate that it took us the debate about a proviso for the country to come to a consensus that, electronic transmission was actually in the 2022 Act. But what we have done presently, in my opinion, is actually to take us far back, probably back to 2018, when those debates were actually had in this country, and Nigerians came out clearly to insist that electronic transmission is essential to the protection of their votes. I think there is need to take a second look at Section 60, especially in the light of Section 50 and also Section 52, as Section 62 of the Electoral Act. I think it is important for INEC to realize the responsibility that it bears as an organization to make the necessary regulations and guidelines to bring some clarity to what these provisions are. It's not going to be easy, but I think that with the support of citizens, it is possible for INEC, to do the needful. The next point I would like to talk about is actually what did not change. And here I'm talking about local government elections. As a country, we are too focused on the national. Section 151 presently, I think, of the Electoral Act needs to be looked at again. There's a whole confusion about what constitutes the procedure for FCT elections, to which state independent electoral commissions must comply with. I think we missed an opportunity of clarifying what actually constitutes, procedures for FCT election. Because reading Section 108 of the Act against Section 151, I believe, I think it's still Section 150 or 151 of the Act, creates a whole confusion as to what constitutes procedure for FCT election. Is it what you defined in Section 108 or the whole gamut of the Electoral Act and the procedures contained therein? The final point, as I conclude, is to address citizens. This is about you. It's not about politicians. It's not about INEC. It's about you. Join a movement. Make your voices heard. Call your representatives. Ask them why they are in favor or against electronic transmission. Ask them for explanations. Join an organization. The media as well must enable that. This is about citizens. This is about their votes. And except citizens are in a position to protect their votes, to control those who ostensibly represent them, then our dream of a truly democratic country will remain an illusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. That's a very good one. We will begin the conversation. For the sake of those who will be asking questions, I'd like our intervention to be very precise and practical. My very good brother on the extreme end is Engineer Oluwalano. He's the head, the ICT head at the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Thank you so much. And it's from you that I'll begin. You may not have concerned yourself so much about the law, or electoral law, but technologically speaking, do we have what it takes to employ and use technology as much in terms of telecoms, in terms of transmission, internet penetration? What our strength and our weaknesses in terms of infrastructure as we have it today in Nigeria?
Thank you so much, Mr. Sheung. Thank the organizer. As we know, the first. Okay. Now, about the Electoral Act. President, I'm here on behalf of my parents, Masuya.
Just a moment. They will come to you. Just a moment. Just hold on for a moment. Let me come to Engineer Wafo. Interested, I want to start on the issue of technology. Where we were in 2023 and now, what exactly has changed, technologically speaking?
So when you say what has changed technologically, is it the network that will transmit, or are you asking in terms of the law?
There was a glitch in 2023.
Yes,
there are debates that we do not have the capacity. But you being an INEC, the beavers, almost all those technology we used in 2023, in 2019, in 2015, you were the head. Yes. You saw it through.
Yes.
Tell us, what has changed?
Okay. For me, the new Electoral Act has given us hope. Let me explain clearly. In the new Electoral Act, you have now IREV in the Electoral Act. Whether we like it or not, we don't have 100% network. We know that. But as at the time we did that design, we had about 93 to 94% 2G. As of today, we are talking about 86 to 89% in terms of the 3G. You can compress your data and use 2G and send your information. Now, that is not the issue. The issue is that there's this word, real time. What is real time? Real time, you finish election. I am not a lawyer, I'm an engineer. Real time, you finish your election, count it, and when you finish counting it, you send two information. One, the accredited voters. Because Nigerians have just forgotten that there was a time 200 people will come to vote, results will be 2,000. So right now, we send accredited voters and also snap the result and send. There are two possibilities. One is that you must snap it and send. The two possibilities that will happen is that maybe it did not go because of network availability. If I have 86% in terms of 3G, so I'm working with only 14%, that is the maximum. Even 2G can, but I want to talk about only the 3G, 86% or more. But I tell you one thing, the moment you move from polling unit to the ward, you get more network. And if you notice, if you send a message through your ordinary phone and it didn't go, as you are moving, once you get a network, it's sent. And our result has its own transfer because you have to send the result from polling unit to the ward as you are collecting from ward you go to. But let me also give you another. I like this Electoral Act. I will tell you what can make it work better. Once you send that result, you've sent accredited voters number, which means how many people came to vote. And you send that result in terms of allocation, but now on paper. People should go to Electoral Act and see that this law says we have to have what we call digital electronic results in a database. INEC needs to have it. So INEC needs to also develop, it's in the law in the Electoral Act, develop the electronic digital results, not only on the Form EC8A. And people want to look at this Form EC8. I want to give, if you snap from EC8A and transfer it, what will make it to change? There are two things. Because if you snap it, it's the original that you have snapped and it goes. What will make it to change? One, somebody may have gone to trying to change some results. As a collation officer at the ward and at the local government, you have access because INEC will give you a BVAS. You have access to see the results of what has been transmitted and take your decision. All these are in section 60 up to 60. You will see it there. So what I beg the commission, because I don't know when I will have another time, is that three things. One, the commission have to look at section 50 and section 70 of this Electoral Act. You have the right to develop your regulations and the guidelines. And in these guidelines, you develop it step by step in taking decisions wherever there's a conflict. Number two is the security agents. Security agencies need to work with INEC in such a manner that when these results are not collected and sent in a particular place, help the citizens so that nothing will happen. And then the last, the judiciary. They need to know the intent. By the time you begin to look at evidence act, all those things about law, the intent of the law goes away. And that was why they said in the Supreme Court judgment, that's not a part of the law. Today is not a part of the law. That's why I say there's an improvement in this law. Right. Let's all work together to get it done.
Let me get Mr. Oluwole Osaze to join. But let me quickly ask.
Yes.
You're not longer in INEC.
Yes.
But for the benefit of Nigerians who are watching now, the INEC server
yes.
and the IRF, could it stand the stress test at that time? Was it the reason why it collapsed on the day that we needed it?
INEC has given, you see, these questions come, INEC has given their own, that is what we call official reason. Even the chairman, I met the chairman made a statement. It's close to it. There are three things about any information system. Number one is the technology. Our technology is good. Process, it is how you want it to happen.
But they hacked into it, don't forget.
The people are the people that use it, both internal and external. For me, one of those issues, because I wasn't there at that time, I was at NW, remember? So, I need to make it clear. INEC reviewed everything and gave their reasons. And I think the chairman has even made statements on that. And I want to stand on it because INEC made me what I am. And I feel, and I want to believe, because they have a very good guy now as the director ICT, They must make sure something like that do not happen again. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Mr. Oluwole Osaze, polling units and result collation, big battleground that Nigerians need to watch. What has changed in this law regarding those two stations that Nigerians need to pay their attention to?
In terms of administration and management,
absolutely
nothing much has changed.
Nothing much.
Next to nothing has changed, actually. Nothing has changed.
We imagine that the law would have empowered us to have transparency. That was why a lot of Nigerians were asking that Section 60 should remain the way it was worked before it got into the Senate, before that debate. And that was why the opposition senators were agitating over it. Yes. But in the real sense of it, could this law give us transparency and accountability in result transmission from polling units to the collation centers?
I wish I could say yes to that, and I would beg to disagree with my brother, friend, and colleague. I agree with Professor Ibano. The law has taken us back, taken us way back, because what it has attempted to give in the proviso to Section 60, subsection 2, what it has given with the left hand has taken with the right hand. It says, yes, you should transmit the results. 67. And by the way, I listened to the INEC chairman, and he talked about the transmission. Transmission is actually defined. Transmission means to send, to transfer. It's defined in Section 155 of the Act. And there's a difference between transmission in Section 60 and 62. 62 now deals with the collation. Collation by the collation officer, by the returning officer. So the question of the result being at the end, at the IREV, comes in view when you now start collating. And says the collation officer shall look at it before he starts collating. But you can transmit. Now, Chidi has explained that you can transmit it and you might not get there immediately. And this issue of real time, no real time, that's real time is not actually the language of law. What probably they should have said, and I'm happy the legislators are here, is say transmit forthwith on the conclusion of counting and signing of the result sheet. Transmit it forthwith. That means immediately. Forthwith is the language usually used when you want to say you do it immediately. No, you can transmit it. It's also possible that it will not get to, because of network, not get there immediately. But it might get there, as Chidi has said, immediately you get to where there's network coverage. So the Section 62, you say, go ahead and transmit the results. You must transmit the results. But now as a provider, when you add a provider to something, you are getting an aberration. You don't have to comply with the main thing which it says, provided that if the result is not transmitted due to network, it says due to network. Who defines what is due to network? Then there's a problem. Then you go to the EC8A. It doesn't say manual, but in terms of interpretation, they now go back to the paper to use in the collation of results. It becomes the primary. The word used by the new Electoral Act becomes the primary source for collation of results. So basically, who is the judge when
there's a
failure of transmission due to network failure? Is it the presiding officer? Is it the network provider? Is it who?
So remind us, history tells us that there was a word similar to what you have said in Section 60 in this, the Electoral Act of 2015, yes, which gave the powers to electoral officers to adopt the incident form if the technology at the time failed. What was the lesson? And that was what prompted the alteration and the amendment of the Electoral Act of 2022.
That is correct. The initial, it was actually an INEC innovation that, look, you cannot prevent, because your card reader cannot read the fingerprints of a voter, you should allow that voter vote. But record it, because if you don't record it, then there'll be a discrepancy between the figures of accredited voters in the smart card reader and in your EC8A, in your result sheets. So that they might be overvoting. So to ensure that everybody whose name is on the register and who turns up to vote is allowed to vote, you fill the incident form, say this, so that for all these purposes, this is why there's a shortfall or discrepancy. That is why they said fill the incident forms. But now that became subject of abuse, in the sense that people now bypass the smart card reader. They now started just using incident forms. So you have in a community, you can have 90% the smart card reader, which they brilliantly designed and very effective but maybe 90-something%, I believe. It was that effective. But we now found out that on the field, they now said it was 10% effective. So many other people did not use the smart card reader. When they wanted to cheat, they now started filling the incident forms. Yeah. So that's the excuse now. Once you give an exception, then the exception becomes the rule. And that's our fear, because it's our recent history. We have witnessed it. So when you say network failure, then you find out that even though there's a 2G has 93, 94%, 3G 86 or 84, 86%, you now find out that when the results start coming up, we view the fact that so many POs will come and say, sorry, failure of network in more than 50% of the time.
Let me go quickly to Ms. Enobi. Ms. Enobi, you are a field general, not only during the election on the field, but a field general in carrying placards too. You are one of those who were agitating that there must be a change in the electoral law. But has anything changed for you? A moment. Let me go to Honorable Balogun. Yes. Honorable Balogun, for you, what has changed? The battleground, we imagine, will be the polling unit and the collation of results. Collation of results and transparency in the collation of...
that you have done justice to it. Do you think Nigerians are happy with you?
Well, thank you so much. There's no glitch from here. So, let's take section 63 that has been so controversial. Now, you make laws to solve a problem. What has been the problem? Movement from polling units to the ward collation centers. And what RF is just doing is for you to transmit the result from the unit to the RF center, and the major job where we have most of this crisis is the result coming from the unit down to the ward collation center. You see, RF will not solve that. RF will not solve it, because RF is just for others to view. Every agent has a copy of the result moving from the unit to the ward collation center. So by the time the collation officer is collating, every agent is expected to follow and monitor and ensure that what you have is what is being collated. If you are not watching it from the RF or from the physical copy, it is still the same from EC8A that you are checking. It is the result they are holding that you are checking from the RF if it actually comes or not. So the impression we are creating is that PABI is a collated result that people are checking on the RF. No, it is just the unit result that goes to the RF. And every agent has it already, including the security officer. They have the result. They are holding it. And that is what is now being compiled on the next level of collation. So we must get that information very well. So if you go to the law, to the amendment, what we say that the presiding officer must transmit after the result has been imputed into the from ECAT, must snap and send. And now there's consequence. If you don't do it, there's a sentence for presiding officer. If you don't do it, there's a sentence for presiding officer that does not do it. So I think we have taken care of who hears or not. So, but the important is that you must ensure that your agent gets there. Ensure that your agent check what is happening with what the ward collation officer is recording, because what goes into the ward collation center does not go to the RF again. It is only the first level of result that goes to the RF. That is what they are watching from the RF. So unless we want to go to electronic voting and electronic transmission of the result directly, that will now be collated generally. So we must know what we are doing. What we have in INEC today, it is not electronic voting, it is still our normal voting, and the only thing that goes into the IRS is the form ECAT. So what you are watching from the IRS is the form ECAT that you have in your hands. Unless someone else is telling me something different here. So we must get what the situation is, so that we know what you are actually telling people. So that is the situation for now. That is what you are checking from the IRS is the form ECAT. And that is why it was stated that the form ECAT remains the primary source of collation, because that's what we are watching from the IRF. unless you know something else that I don't know.
I don't think Senator Ume agree with you.
Nobody in the panel does.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is the crux of the matter. Ability to transmit EC8A to the IREF portal. That EC8A contains every information about the polling unit. Number of accredited voters, number of invalid votes, number of valid votes, scores made by the candidates and the political parties. They're all tabulated in the EC8A1. And then the totals are made. Everybody signs off. Then the law requires that you should transmit it to the IREF portal. The reason for making it mandatory, that result that you have snapped should go to the IREF portal immediately or as soon as it is done, is to secure the result of that EC8A. What is in that sheet will be secured when you upload it to the IREF portal. That IREF portal is not a collation mechanism. But once results begin to change at the ward level, EC8B, then at the local government level, EC8C, you will immediately use the IREF uploaded results to cross-check what is coming out. And you will immediately know when they start manipulating it. So the thing is that if you don't do that, or you give a discretion as to whether to transmit the result immediately upon establishing it, is that when you say provided that there is communication to effect it, you have killed the essence of making it mandatory, because somebody can now claim lack of network to delay uploading the result forever. And there's no way you can compel him to say you had service. There's nobody that will monitor your telephone on that day to know whether you had the network to upload the result. So that is why the proviso has put a K-leg to the intended efficiency of the system. So once you secure the polling booth result, every process, ward level, when you collect at the ward, you transmit to the local government level. At the local government level, you collect again and transmit to the constituency level. But all of them must be in agreement with what has been uploaded to the IREF portal. That is the monitor. So once you dispense it, anybody can make 2,000 to be 4,000, 50,000, and so on and so on. I've seen it. I've been part of election for the past 23 years. And I know that there are places where even when the results have been established, you go to the EC8B, they add it up, somebody will score 172. Then the person who is doing it will put 2 as a prefix. It becomes 2,172. They keep adding it like that up to local government level. And when you complain, they say you can't change it.
That's how they rig election.
That's the way they rig election, yes. They say you can't change it. They say you cannot change it.
So that's why the IREF result...
That's why IREF will be a checkmate. IREF portal will be a checkmate to all that. Because as soon as the elections are done, conducted, and these results are uploaded...
You want to check. Randomly, you see the result established. Give me a moment, Senator Ome. I was sorry, a moment. Ms. Anaobi, you were going to rule out the things that you thought has not changed.
or the difference, rather.
The differences.
Can you hear me now?
Someone wants to gag you. Well, let me allow Engineer Oluwole. And my question to you, you are the expert in the room. Of course, we have Engineer One for us here. But give us an understanding. From the Nigerian Society of Engineers, you released a statement and you gave all the statistics to tell Nigerians whether we are ready for technology or transmission of results, or whether the network that we have can carry us. What are the data telling us? What is the data telling us?
Okay, thank you again for the question. I was trying to say the other time that we're the first to make that statement, supporting the real-time transmission. Well, like you said, the real-time is the issue. And all we want to do is the government to get it right in elections. We're not against the government. And I'll first break it down to the representation in the law, the technology in the representation in the law. I think the disputes of these technologies has been their representation in the law, which has been taken care of. I've been listening to a lot of lawyers saying smart readers were not admitted in court because it was not represented in the law. But now we have the beavers and the IREV in the law. So I think that solves that problem so that if anything comes up. And another issue is that people are talking about the brand, saying what happens, are we going to be changing the names of these technologies all the time? I think IREV and beavers are very generic names. They are not the brand, they are the type of technology. Because as a consultant, technical consultant over many years, when you submit technical specifications, you talk about the type of the technology, let's say for instance, laptop, then the brand, HP and all. So beavers is a generic word like laptop in quotes. The bimodal, which also we believe takes care of the manual and the digital. So it has that capacity.
Engineer, let me ask you.
Okay.
Do you think on election day, all of the telecoms company can work together and deliver a good network for result transmission?
Yes, I believe so, because I think we also have the capacity now. And I know the government is also pushing to improve the network, like I mentioned the other time, the project bridge and all that. And the telecom companies themselves, for instance, MTN, I think they invested about 1 trillion last year from their reports, and they've been able to cover more spaces. So I believe telecoms operators can come together and make it work. And I'd like to speak about the manual part. It should not be an issue. I think we should be looking at how do we solve the disputes that come, like for instance what Senator Ahmed said, how do we solve these disputes when it happens? When India started these real-time elections, they had to inculcate manual behind again as a backup because a lot of disputes came out. And like you saw technology now, the first time the glitch had to change. So we just made provisions for everything. How do we move forward? How do we ensure that the issues that come out in between the IREV, the beavers, the manual, how do we solve those problems? I think that should be our focus now. But I believe that we have the good technology to try it out in this election.
All right. And you know what? I wanted to raise something quickly.
I need to clarify something. Please, when you send the result at the polling unit, we always have what they call the RA tech, the local government tech. You know the job? So that the collation officer, when he's collecting the result from the polling unit, we have access to that IREF portal. So that you will check what is in the IREF portal to what you have brought. That's number one. Number two, he has access to the number of accredited voters. So these are the two. And it's in this new Electoral Act. It's there. So what I said that the INEC should bring the procedure and guidelines to make sure that the person who is collecting at the ward must cross-check both what is on the portal for the IREF, which he can see, and the accredited voters are making. This is in section 62(4). Yeah. So for me, it is INEC to bring the guidelines and make sure that that result that was sent to IREF and the one that is moving to ward remains the same.
All right.
If they do not remain the same, they should bring it up. Let people know who changed it. Because let me finalize, sir. From EC8A can either be, somebody mutilate it. That's one dispute. Or no mutilation, but different result. INEC needs to give guidelines on which one will the collation officer will take. You cannot go and take a mutilated one when the one on IREV is not mutilated. And if the one on IREV is not mutilated, and the one that also came is not but different result, INEC will take decision and know where is this result coming that is different.
All right.
That is what I feel. So the law is good, but implementation
I need
is
Mr. Nobi, because of our time, to quickly
Thank you very much.
get our views out.
There are 6 key areas where there is a difference. One is, Shehu, you have put me as a placard carrier. You have been carrying placard behind the scenes. We are carrying it together. One is the use of technology in elections. The second one is the financial independence of INEC. The third one is the political party primaries. The fourth is the campaign limits, finance limits. The fifth area is a stronger electoral offenses and penalties. You have also inclusion and accessibility. I just want to put the difference to say that when you are looking at the Electoral Act of 2022, it acknowledges the beavers and also allowed transmission. We have to, because the issue of transmission now, we are talking about it as if it never happened or it wasn't there. It was there. The human element brought in the issue of glitches because they had the capacity. The former chairman, I remember, said there was no problem with them that they were able to. And I think my brother here, my neighbor, who also watched the signing of the 2022 Electoral Act from Channels TV that time, will also testify. He has said it. What we are saying is that you can transmit. Transmitting, whether you are talking about real time or not, from that very where you are credited, the machine is able to do transmission at that time. Whether it connects at that time is secondary. Did you transmit that very moment? That is what we're talking about.
That's it.
And so all of it has that. And so the 2026 makes it mandatory. Why are we even talking of the transmission? It's because of the tribunal, the presidential tribunal, that now says, the transmission is, INEC can use its own rules, where INEC use the guideline. I think that's why we now said, okay, make it mandatory. And that's what the 2026 have done. You have already talked about the financial independence of INEC. We are talking about even the 365. I remember when we were in the struggle for the 2022 Electoral Act. The issue was that it was getting too late. Please do it quickly so that INEC can roll out their work. And now you are saying 6 months before, with procurement and all the bottleneck. So what are we talking about? That is why a new amendment is very, very important. Because what you are saying is, with what is happening now, 2024 budget, I don't know if it has been implemented yet. Not to talk of 2025, and now you are putting that. So if you want to pull that, that's a huge difference, and it's going to make life difficult. The party primaries that we're talking about, they used it in 2022 and now removed back and forth. It had introduced the difference. The civil society organizations are not the politicians. If the parties are not speaking out the way what hurts them, everything is rolled in. The civil society is overwhelmed, but we'll continue to do our best.
Yeah.
For the campaign limits now, presidential campaign used to be 5 billion. And now you have taken, it used to be, for 2022, it's 5 billion. Now it's been taken to 10 billion. And for governorship, it's 1 billion. It's been taken to 3 billion. Many people who want to go in for elections, where are they going to get 1 billion? Another thing we need to look is the source of whatever money that they're talking about. Stronger offenses that for 2022, stronger offenses, many people have been arrested in the past. Where are they? What has happened?
Let me at this point plead that you allow me to take questions from the floor. Because this is a town hall, and I know that a few people have questions. I see a man there. Please, if you could come forward quickly. So I'll take 2 questions quickly to the panelists. I see Mr. Bolarinwa is, I could call him a veteran journalist by the manner of experience that he's garnered on the field. Please go ahead. Your name, your organization, and your question, quickly.
My name is Adebayo Odorin from Dark Communications, AIT Repower. My question is to the engineer, Chidi.
Yeah.
I remember vividly that IREF was first tested at the by-election in Nasarawa State. And I remember at the consultative meeting, you defended it, that it was a huge success. And suddenly, you, who spearheaded the revolution, the beavers, on the eve of the election, you were removed. you are transferred. Will you advise INEC that a person in your position that was removed of the eve of the election, that will now witness a glitch, should he be removed this time around?
Thank you very much. I'll take a second question quickly. Come to the microphone. Thank you so much. Not you, sir. Thank you. There's a second person with a question. That question was directly at you.
I know.
All right.
Good evening, all. Thank you, the organizers. And my question is almost like a suggestion to INEC. Right. And I must say, a lot has been given. A lot is expected. Okay, yeah.
Who are you?
Sorry, I'm Dr. Omofoma Daniel from the African Electoral Integrity Initiative, Washington, D.C. Right, I'm a Nigerian. So yeah, I'm making a suggestion because a lot has been said here. We're looking at the integrity of the law, the process, but we're not looking at the integrity of the people. Right, because we might have the right laws, the right processes in place, but we might have the wrong persons handling this whole process. So I think I would suggest to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission to have some sort of audit of his personnel, integrity audit. And also the second recommendation, technology is not far-fetched. I mean, there's what we can do. We should have election technology, not just regular technology. I've been privileged to work with the commission, and I understand that most of your machines, they use regular SIM cards, just the same SIM cards we all use. So you can have specific SIM cards like the multi-IMSI SIM card that works on the 4 major networks. So if MTN is down, it picks Glo. So with this, there's no downtime. All right. I mean, technology works everywhere. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much indeed for that question. So let me allow you to answer that question.
The mic.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yes. Yes, you're correct. But I need to also inform you that we started these digital systems as far back as 2003 when we did OMR4. I was involved. And after that, we ran a lot of programs, a lot of cancellations. I won't say why some of them, but Jega came in and new ideas came in, and we brought this micro. Let me say this, we're Africans. People like to cheat. And if you are doing any design, you do the design based on your environment. So the first thing we needed to do is to register people. That was done. We solved that. We moved to the next stage, which is, why should 500 people come to polling unit and you see 5,000 results? So we should make sure at least we record 500, so that even if you want to rig within 500. That was what we used. I'm being honest, as an engineer, you have to look at reality. So we did that. Smart card reader was done, but there was a problem with smart card reader because it can only take fingerprint. We look at facial recognition. We brought in. So my dear brother, yes, we started the beavers and other things at Nasarawa. We did not count all the elections we did from Nasarawa till before 2023 elections, and things were all going well. So whatever that happened in 2023 election, we are learning. We have to look at what the issues and then improve on it. For my movement, the commission has the right to move me at any time because I'm a civil servant. I'm retired now, so I can move anywhere I want.
So quickly, there is an online question I like, because we're not only here physically, there are people also. Jerry sent a WhatsApp message and he's asking, can we trust INEC to transmit results, and will there be actions against any compromised election result sheet? I think that question is for the INEC chairman who is with us. If you permit me, could you let me pass the microphone to the INEC chairman so that he can answer the question directly? So that question is directly to you, INEC chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I forgot to speak about
there's even a
safeguard that we have introduced into Beavers now.
Of somebody who
before at the polling unit, when you are transmitting results, the usual problem has not even been addressed. At collation stage, the collation officer stroke returning officer, they have the power to make some changes. And this can only happen if the result at the polling unit has not been properly reconciled. But now, we have introduced some validation and some safeguard in the beavers, that it will not even go at all. So it's not a question, because before now, what is expected is that the the collation officer must check the results of the physical from EC8A plus what has been compared with what has been transferred to IRF before the result is collated. For most of the time, you discover they don't do it. And then the result will still go to the next stage. So one important safeguard that we have introduced into these beavers, which we tested during this FCT election, and we are still auditing it, it will not even go to IRF. So if the results on the beavers accreditation, like he said, there are two stages of transmission to IRF. Number one, the beavers accreditation, and number two, the result that is sent to IRF. So if there are discrepancies, this time around, it will not go.
Thank you,
so we don't want to have a situation where you have what you have in IRF is different from what you have with your party agents. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. We're totally out of time for this session, but I must sincerely thank you, gentlemen. Engineer one for Mr. Oluwole Osaze, Ms. NLB, Honorable Balogun, Senator Ume, at a very short notice that you came. Engineer, thank you so much. Can you please put your hands together for them? Our next session is going to be very interesting because party leaders and a mix of other eminent Nigerians will be joining me on the stage, and we're looking at the amendment as regarding or as relating to party nomination and how you can select those who will carry the party flag at the election. We're going to break, everyone, but when we return, it's going to be more interesting after this break, everyone.
Yes.
INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the three critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you're already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration CVR is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office. Do not wait until the last minute. 3. Mobilize 10 people to vote. Democracy is a collective responsibility. Tell at least 10 friends or family members to prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your mobilization multiplies that voice. Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling units. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity. INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the three critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you're already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration (CVR) is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office. Do not wait until the last minute. 3. Mobilize 10 people to vote. Democracy is a collective responsibility. Tell at least 10 friends or family members to prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your mobilization multiplies that voice. Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling units. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity. INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the 3 critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you're already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration (CVR) is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process physically at your INEC local government area office.
Can we just take our seats? We are going back. It's a live show.
To prepare to vote. Your vote is your voice, but your
We're going live now, please. Take your seats, please.
Elections are not won on social media. They are decided at the polling units. Prepare early. Democracy works when citizens show up. This message is from the Civil Society Network on Electoral Integrity. INEC has fixed the dates for the 2027 general elections. January 16, 2027 is the presidential and National Assembly elections. February 6, 2027 is the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. The countdown has begun. Now the question is simple. Are you ready to vote? Here are the 3 critical steps every citizen must take. 1. Confirm your polling unit. If you are already registered, verify your polling unit early so you show up at the correct location on election day. Visit the INEC polling unit locator at cvr.inecnigeria.org/pu. 2. Register if you are not registered, or if you registered and need to change your location. If you are not registered, this is your moment. The continuous voter registration (CVR) is ongoing. Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.org/. Then complete the process.
Chance to see Real Madrid live. 3 SUVs to be won. Buy any Media 400ml promo product, scratch and dial to enter.
Start your registration online at cvr.inecnigeria.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. You're still watching the Citizens Townhall on Electoral Act 2026 live here in the city of Abuja. We're on to the next panel session, and I'm being joined right here on the stage, Reverend Father Atta Brekindo of the Kukah Centre. Thank you so much, Father, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And the National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Professor Nentawe Youthwada. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us.
Thank you, Shehu.
I appreciate it. And the representative of the ADC is Dr. What's your name? Skip me now. Dr. Sam Amadi. Apologies. And also we had Senator Nenadi Usman of the Labour Party earlier. who needed to leave because of some personal matters. But she already dropped some messages. Also, we have joining us Ms. Vanessa Gregory of the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Thank you so much indeed for joining. And the man who is the leader of all political parties in Nigeria, the IPAC National Chairman, Mr. Yusuf Dansele. Thank you so much indeed for your time. This session is about candidate nomination and party primaries. And whatever that has changed in the law is what we're looking at and how we can make it better. For it's important for our viewers and anyone listening to know that the leaders that we get at a polling unit or to vote for on the ballot are a result of the selection within the political parties. So it is important. This is one of the most important aspects of our electioneering process. If you give us a dumb man to be the leader of our country, we are only doomed to vote for the dumb people that he has given us. So it's important that the political parties give us the best of them to go to the ballot. So, Father, from your own point of view, you've monitored and you're saying you look at the past and the present. What the electoral law, the amended Electoral Act, are you satisfied with those the alterations in relation to party nomination and party activities?
Thank you. I think it's good. It's good in the sense that now we have direct primaries or consensus. And with these direct primaries, for the first time, the voters will actually be considered as significant. But it's unfortunate that they are only considered when it's time for election rather than in terms of governance. And also, maybe it will help in drive for more registration, voter education, you know, and in terms of membership growth. But also, it's important to note that the aspect of indirect primaries has been taken out, because this colonization of delegates or the purchase of delegates is no longer going to exist, and it's really a good thing. But somehow I'm sad, because what I wanted to see as part of the law is we see lots of defections happening. When people defect, they lose the membership of that party, but they don't lose the seat. They go along with the seat. So I was expecting that, considering the membership of a party, which is something we really have to consider, is the fact that if people defect, I think they should lose that membership, because it will now help us to think through as who is actually loyal to a party.
Just because like we see a lot of defection to the APC.
Now, I didn't say that, but because you also have to define what membership is. Membership is not just registration. It's also loyalty. And we can see that with all the defections, there's absolutely no loyalty. And my final point here is that I think in this country, historically, we have gone through elections after elections. But the issue of governance is not considered. But for me, there's a correlation between between democracy and literacy. Because if you want to have members of your own political party to have the capacity and the competence for critical thinking and to decide who can actually represent them, I think that education is really important. Because you cannot run democracy in a country that half of it have not gone to school. And for me, this is really a problem, because whether you are going to have direct primaries, people still have the money to purchase these members who are actually going to vote, because people have actually been dispossessed and disempowered.
All right. Professor, I mean, there's a particular dart, maybe unintentionally shot at your party, because you are the party that is receiving everyone. Yeah. You will have had people with empty chairs. Now, if the policy as being pushed by a father is affected, that those who move should lose their seats. But your party is doing digital registration. And other political parties, it seems you knew that this was going to happen. So you started on time. And other political parties like the ADC said, they're not really, they are rejecting INEC timeline because of that clause. But tell us about the alteration in the law. It looks like it suits your party more.
Yes, it suits us, but we never had any advantage, because APC set up a committee to start digitization in 2015. It didn't work. The committee was revitalized again in 2019. And then in 2023, after the election, the president set up the committee to implement the drive. I took over as the chairman of the party, and I just pushed it to a new level, enforce and implement all the programs that were there before. So I only implemented what was on ground. And what we also pushed to the next level was to use not just ordinary registration, but to do a handshake with NIMC. So because any organization in Nigeria can request for a handshake with NIMC, so that we use the name of our own members and we collect our primary data from NIMC, so that we make sure that gives us an advantage that anybody registered in APC now is a Nigerian by birth and also Nigeria by origin. So it gives the advantage of having only Nigerians being members of APC. That's number one. Number two, it avoids ghost registration. So everybody in APC, we know your address, we know your phone number, we know your home, we know we have your biometric. So any data about the person we already have. So we're not just working on just the primary election, but we're working actually for our sake. We want to be sure that we can communicate all our members, we can mobilize our members. So the e-registration was not just meant for primary election; it was actually meant for mobilization, identification, and rewarding of our members also. So it was, it was a step taken in a good direction. But for me, what is the lesson for us to learn from it? First, this will allow political parties to conduct more transparent primary election, especially allowing for the direct primaries. The risks are now more credible. But is there an advantage of having even the direct primaries? The answer is yes. I was an INEC commissioner before, and almost all political parties prefer indirect primaries, where delegates are sought after, and election can be concluded by under a board, or few gatekeepers, or few middlemen, buy off the election. So why is it that almost all political parties prefer indirect primaries to direct primaries? Why is it that you have three options of consensus, direct and indirect, but almost all the political parties will go for one option, delegates? Now, with the indirect primaries now, because direct primaries now, it allows for democratization. It allows participation at the grassroots. It moves the primary election from boards and gatekeepers and middlemen to the people, to the people. And members now can feel being part of the process. And if you can win your primary, if you can win the primary election, you've already mobilized your members completely and collectively feel being part of the process, and you can almost be sure of winning your election. And that would throw up more candidates that are more people-oriented.
Is it fair that people took the mandate from another political party that saw them into office and they have taken it into your party? Is it fair?
Very fair. Very fair, because they discovered that these political parties are already dying, and some of them, they also saw the reason to join us, because they saw the things, the things we're doing as a party, from party management to party organization to party mobilization. AP seems to be the best party in terms of mobilization, organization, and governance, and that gives a leeway for the it's a competition. I go to a market, I have a choice to make, a choice between good governance, good party governance, good party management. You're assured that if you're in this party, you have more transparent system. I'll give an example. We had a primary in Osun, and what the consensus, and all the 9 candidates in Osun agreed that they want only one person to be the candidate. No political party, no party in Nigeria has had consensus without going to court. Only APC has done that in 2 states. And if you look at also our primary elections that we've been conducting, we've been doing we're the only party that has been conducting direct primaries since 2015 and 2019. We'll be conducting direct primaries as a preferred option. So most of the people who are on the other wing that are seeing the dress rehearsal of good governance, good primary election, and good option in us, of course, they will make a choice of coming to APC.
All right, thank you, Professor Yitwada. Dr. Sam Amadi, what are the worries of the ADC? The party has officially come out to reject INEC timelines, basically based on some of these issues that has been raised. What is the position of the ADC?
I think the ADC's position would be the position of most Nigerians, essentially, because the political party does not exist outside society. Again, Prof is my good friend, very brilliant and nice gentleman. But I want to remind you that one of the so-called direct primaries of 2015 or 2019 actual election resulted in about 40 million votes from the primary for President Buhari, which was more than actual votes of members. So, so let's not romanticize direct primaries. So you have a direct primary when the outcome of the primary itself, the vote is far more, not even the vote of the election is not up to 20% of the primary. So that tells you the quality of that direct primary. And look at the problem here. No doubt about it. You see, the theory around primaries is that you want members of the parties to express their will. Now, if you look at models across the world, delegate elections are not even indirect so-called delegates, are not themselves as we think about them. Because if you go to the US, many do caucusing, many do primary, many do delegates. But the process is always clear. The rules are clear. So people know how do you emerge as a delegate. So I don't want us to put too much, duty around direct. That's the first question. The second question is INEC. Again, and that ties back to the issue why people defected. Some people are in safe seats, what we call safe seats, where they are doing well as governors. They don't seem to have problem, but they defect because they have no confidence in the integrity of the election. I'm sorry to say, nothing the chairman of INEC said this evening inspires confidence in the integrity of the 2027 election. His understanding about what makes a good election are logistical. But if you look at, and by the way, if you look at an election dispute, 2023 election, the dispute was never around. Ballot box came by 5 p.m. It didn't come early. Every issue is around the integrity of that vote itself. And so I would want them to speak more around how do we ensure that when people vote, result and vote align, result declared and the result of vote align. He didn't say that. And that ties back to the crisis we have with INEC. Look, yes, it's good to talk about open primaries, direct primaries. But this is a party, you are giving them a period of time to organize, submit electronic register as credible, again, conduct those indirect primaries for all political office elections across the country. So the point is this. APC, I was commending him as a former commissioner, maybe he has insider knowledge. APC's head start, okay? So now you're going to create a crisis for other parties. And that speaks, sir, going forward. In 2023 election, 22nd, INEC did a very terrible thing. I was a regulator for 5 years at least. INEC is first and primarily a regulator, not a transaction agency. You cannot, on the eve of primary, the parties came and said, INEC, extend the time for us. INEC said, no extension. PDP hurried and did a primary convention. On the eve of PDP's convention, INEC gave 1 week for APC to redesign. That is Regulation 101, fundamental flaw. You must keep very even balance for everybody. Again, you can't issue election timetable as a final product without giving the parties drafts and say, on record, give us articulation of how you see this proposed calendar. Because ultimately, it's for the benefit of the political. So they give you their input and say, Mr. Chairman, look at, you have a problem. I know, the law is this, that. please, this time is too short. So you reason with them and provide reason. Now, this is not theoretical. Every work that you do, sir, has to proceed from what you call decision-making on record. One, evidence-based, reason, and communicated to them and their feedback in writing. Why is it important? It allows for judicial review effectively. It allows for integrity of process. Again, that comes to the issue of technology. In the last FCC election, the allegation was that beavers are now in people's hands. We don't even have the integrity of the technology. So my question would be this. I say ADC or any other party or any Nigerian civil group, we finished 2023 election with so much allegations, so much issues. National Assembly did not conduct one public hearing. Nobody was put on oath, neither Mahmoud, nor all the officers, to tell us what happened. That is shambolic. There's nowhere in the world that what comes out of it is credible. So the minimum is two things to conclude. First, there should be a bipartisan audit commission of INEC technology. Nobody should place confidence in INEC deployment of technology. The minimum is professionally tested by sort of engineers, bipartisan, to say, tell us how you procure beavers, show us clearly the security, the guarantee that these beavers are not in people's hands. Even though fake election results were printed and used, INEC admitted them. So we can't be talking about elections. You see, the problem in Nigeria is that we have no rigor of administration, rigor of process. How, for example, does the chairman of ADC or Labour Party know anything about your guarantee of process? What do you have to guarantee? Do they know? Okay. There should be a public certified procedure to say, even if you want to do direct primary, look at the considerations of time gap, to fill in the membership card, to pick up logistics, to go across the country. And by the way, last point, if you look at the law says direct or consensus. The same law now says if political office holders want to be delegates, how do you become delegates in a direct primary? That means there was a lot of incoherence and lack of clarity about that law.
Thank you so much. Ms. Vanessa Gregory, what are your views? Do you think that this law gives the political parties to give us the kind of candidate that will make Nigerians proud? No, I'm talking about Ms. Gregory. Sorry, sir. No, Ms. Gregory, sorry.
No problem. So in my opinion, I would say it is twofold. So we have a law that works, but the problem is the people enacting the law behind the scenes. The law fails to account for the different power structures, so like godfatherism and the actors within, So as long as the law is created and people follow it to the T, there's loopholes that the law does not account for. And I feel like those are the loopholes that will be manipulated and not bring out the best candidates.
So the crux of the matter is there are those who have had issues with the kind of candidates that we've had in the past. And I mentioned this earlier, that it is what the political parties give us on the ballot. We can't choose outside of what the political parties have given us. And a lot of Nigerians who run away from joining political parties in the private sector, eggheads, those who have jackpot, those who are. But the new law, as it's framed presently, especially the modality of nomination and party primaries, if you add your way, what would you have infused or removed?
So I'm going to bring it back to gender. I feel like there's a lot of qualified female candidates that get filtered out at the primaries. One good thing about this law is that if a woman has a female candidate, or aspirant has good grassroots support, then she can use that as a means to pull through the primaries. But the law does not provide for gender quotas. It doesn't give equal access to women. So if I had a choice and what to put into the law, I would put in gender quotas, because, you know, we keep clamoring about we need more women in, you know, all these positions. But if they're filtered out from the very beginning, we're never going to see them at the positions of governorship, presidency, whatever you want to call it, because
it had exceptions. When I did the diagnostics to start the reform, do you know what? Most of the contracts in this country were being procured on the basis of the exceptions. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys? Like, literally, 90% of Nigeria's contracts were being procured on the basis of exception rules. So the exception had become what?
The norm.
The norm. And when impunity becomes the way of life, there is absolutely no pathway to progress of society. So we should not take the provisos that are added to the electronic transmission of voters as though it is something that just, you know, just accept it like that, manage it, as Nigerians normally say. No managing. The citizens of this country want transparency, and they must get transparency. That's number one. Number two, Shehu, and I'll give you the mic. Number two is that pre the election for 2027, we already see a sample of what would happen through the FCT elections. There was voter suppression. The fact that people were going to 5 polling units looking for their names, that's already an exclusionary thing going on there. In a decade where disruptive technology has given us incredible possibilities, that should not be something we take lying low. So we do need to audit the FCT election and the processes that happened in order to give us insight into what is ahead of us in 2027. And a coattail to that is that pre-2027, here we are with such intimidation of the opposition. Those of us who are citizens, who don't belong to a political party, we see what's going on. And that enables me to say that if the ruling party continues to intimidate opposition in the way that it is doing, it is simply putting a death knell to democracy. Because democracy does not allow for shrinking spaces of participation. And by the way, citizens, your final word, if you think you don't matter, you're making a big mistake. You matter. A party that has found a way to get more than 80% of the states is afraid of transparency in elections. Don't you know what that means? It means that it already called the result for itself in a transparent election. And therefore is doing everything necessary to stop it. So what we must do is that citizens must gain their agency and collectively work, if not for themselves, for their children and for the children that will come through their children. I thank you very much.
You brought the burden of this panel already, and you really have been able to tell us so much. But I mean, from the perspective of your expertise in the media, there's a whole lot of work. What must happen before 2027, Mr. Alawungade?
Well, I think first thing, what must happen is that our legislators, the senators and the reps, must understand the implication of the popular saying, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. And to that extent, it will be good to have these amendments that will remove elements of ambiguity, that will give opportunity to people who want to compromise the electoral process to do so. But I think for the media, this election in 2027 and the 2 ones before it will not necessarily be fought at the level of the polling units. It will be fought at the level of public opinion. And we do know how technologies have become a problem, the manipulations that come with artificial intelligence and the deepfakes. And so to that extent, we must call out whoever engages in disinformation, up to and including the political parties and their spokespersons. Because people, when you talk of disinformation, the tendency is to look in the direction of the media or the social media. But our research in the past has also shown that political parties sometimes will disseminate videos of rallies, supposedly, but are actually videos of spectators at a football speech, at a football match. So we must call out whoever engages in disinformation. And I think that the media responsibility would also include the fact of holding not just INEC accountable. Of course, part of what we would expect from INEC as media is proactive dissemination of information, explaining processes, crisis communication, when there are problems, because we are in 24/7 life now, such that you don't have to wait till the following day before you issue a press statement. You can issue press statements or statements even at midnight at 1 a.m. In any case, when elections are being conducted here, Nigerians in the diaspora are watching or monitoring that election through different time zones. Now, beyond INEC, which we have to hold accountable, I think the media needs to hold the political parties much more accountable. The political parties get away with a lot of things. They sign peace accord when it's organized by the National Peace Committee through the Kukah Centre, but they rarely follow that. They sign peace accord today, the following day there is violence. We must take records and say that you have, a responsibility. I also think that the media needs to thoroughly digest and understand this Electoral Act and use all means necessary, including indigenous languages, to disseminate the implications of the content to the people. I believe we are likely to help in that process as Citizens Network on Electoral Integrity, because we've also talked about having a citizens version of this Electoral Act when all the amendments and the cleanup will have been done, so that Nigerians could actually understand all these provisions. Yeah. So we do have a lot of responsibility, but what we want to say, and I think part of it, the last one, has to do with the security agencies. They must also be accountable. If you say you are going to deploy thousands of policemen to monitor elections, we want to know the extent to which you are provided for their welfare, and in fact, the impartiality of those policemen. Finally, our security as media, our freedom, matters. And I want to use this opportunity to say that the Nigerian Media Code of Election Coverage, which came out of the media itself, mandates 4 institutions to do everything it can to ensure that the media is able to report elections fairly and accurately. First is the INEC, I already talked about that. Second are the governments, particularly the security agencies, who must not in any circumstance molest journalists that are accredited to cover the elections. Then the civil society too must be open to us, and the political parties must hold their agents responsible whenever, out of overzealousness or out of the fact that they think journalists are working for opposition. It's not the making of journalists that some of them work with politicians who own the media. But we want to say that we are committed to ethical reporting of the elections, and political parties must also protect us. I think that this should be the essence of what the media should be doing between now and 2027, holding every other stakeholder accountable for us to have credible elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arogunade. Honorable KJ, an experienced lawmaker and politician, that's who you are. What must happen before 2027 from your own experience, practically speaking, field work now?
Okay. Thank you very much, Sheung. I believe that the National Assembly, my colleagues in the National Assembly, have served Nigerians a law that has left all of us in a quandary. I believe that the job of the legislature is to collate the aggregate opinion of a critical mass of the Nigerian people, and clearly that's not what happened with this law. The House of Representatives, to which I belong, passed the right law and turned around and did a volte-face, and I'm still concerned about what could have transpired with that. Now, what has happened is that here we are, stuck with a piece of legislation that leaves Nigerians bruised, concerned, and of course, the burden has been passed to INEC. Okay, so I believe that ahead of that, in the words of Kofi Annan, he says that democracy is too important to be left to politicians. And so I believe that it must be an all-of-society engagement. And I think that ahead of 2027, there are certain people that I have penned down that should be the critical stakeholders in what happens ahead of 2027. Even if, and I know that people are still optimistic that there may be an amendment, I am not that optimistic, but in the event that there is an amendment, it will be absolutely wonderful, but in the event that there is not, we have to deal with making the lemonade out of the lemon that my colleagues at the National Assembly have served us. So I put down 5 critical stakeholders: INEC, the judiciary, civil society, media, security agencies, political parties, and I left the best for the last, the citizens. With regards to INEC, everybody has spoken about everything that INEC should do. They should do the technological appraisal, they should do a fire drill on logistics, they should know that they shall be held accountable. But I think one thing that is very important, and we never really talk about it, and everybody speaks about security agencies, is that for these elections to be truly inclusive, every time us politicians speak about 26 years of unbroken democracy, somehow we forget the security agencies who provide the space that makes it safe for us to run in this election. Now, I've asked myself the question, why are the security agencies partisan? Because they do not feel that they have a stake. Most security agencies have never, in 8 election cycles, have never voted in any election. And that is because they're essential services. They're posted away from where they register, therefore they do not feel that they're a critical stakeholder in the electoral processes. In other countries, in Ghana and across the continent, there's something known as early voting, where they give them the opportunity to vote ahead of everybody so that they feel that they are indeed a part of the electoral process. I think it is something that INEC needs to look at, so that the security agencies don't feel that it is us against them, but they feel that they're a critical part of the Nigerian electoral process, and therefore we must include them in the elections. Second of all, and of course without prejudice to everything that has been said about INEC, I also think that INEC has spoken about glitches, and INEC has spoken about hacking, or my colleagues in the National Assembly hacking. I think that we must look at the infrastructure around INEC as critical infrastructure in the same way as we look at oil installations. So that if it is going to be put in the cyber crimes law or whatever law, I think INEC will do very well to send a piece of legislation to the National Assembly to look at the way in which they protect the IREF and whatever it is, so that the arguments on hacking no longer rear their ugly heads when we're having conversations about protecting INEC. Now I'll go to the judiciary. And Antiobi here spoke about low voter turnout. Now, of course, everybody has spoken about, and I wish the APC chairman was here. But the greatest problem that most of the political parties have, and why everybody seems to be cross-carpeting to the APC, is not necessarily because they think that the APC is better run, nor do they think that the policies of the APC are good. It is because most of the other political parties are embroiled in litigation, and therefore people within the political parties do not feel that they will have expression in that political party, in those political parties. Now, this is aside from the fact that there is a Supreme Court judgment that says that political parties must have the opportunity to, that the courts don't have the mandate to adjudicate on issues of political parties. They should not speak about who's supposed to be the chairman of the party and so on and so forth. But what has happened, and the scariest case before a court today is the one where they're attempting to deregister the ADC. Now, what that has done is that the people within those political parties don't have the confidence to sit within those political parties, and so you find that politicians are starting to migrate to all the other political parties. I believe that when one looks at what happened in the United States with the Supreme Court, and they protected their democracy, that the judiciary in Nigeria is a critical stakeholder in protecting our democracy, and therefore the judiciary must do everything to dispense with all the cases so that the political parties, the APC, the PDP, the Labour Party, the ADC, and so on and so forth, now can have the confidence of the citizens. Of course, the civil society. Every story that is told in Nigeria about moving from the military to the to civil rule, and there's this whole debate about whether it's civil rule or whether it's democracy. But everybody who has done that, every time civil society comes out and speaks about the central role that they played in that. Now, today, what we find, and every time I engage with people who are of civil society, I ask them, was this the democracy that we envisaged? If you have birthed a child, and the child is running rogue on you, then it is the responsibility of civil society to whip that child into line. I've always made the point that if the civil society could bend soldiers with absolute power and wrest power from them, then why can't they be more alive to their responsibilities? And they are doing a lot, but I would like them to do even more in trying to whip civilians whose only gun is weaponizing institutions that are supposed to protect our democracy.
Sorry, apologies. Mr. Andrew Mamadou, it's your time.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think the biggest challenge is that Nigerians are too trusting. So we trust our politicians, we trust INEC, we trust the political parties, but time and time again, we get burned. So the question is, if we continue in this trajectory, are we ever going to see our country develop? Election is a means to an end. It's about good governance. And government is so powerful that it determines the kind of knowledge I acquire. Government can make a rule that says this color of vehicle can no longer move in Nigeria, and that becomes the law, and it's operational. So government is so powerful. However, there is, under John Locke's theory, there is that division that says that as powerful as you are, as citizens, we then have a right to put you in power and to remove you from power. And that is what we are saying. Our election has to be transparent. The major power of the citizen is, if I like what you have done in 4 years or in 3 years, and I see that it is good, I will re-elect you if you are supposed to be re-elected. And if I see that what you have done is not good enough, I then bring you down. So the question around, should we accept this or not? Are you trying to force it down on citizens? We had several engagements on this process, and we are still saying that from all conversation, major conversation here today, we are still saying that this law has got to change. We want the electronic transmission majorly to be changed, and we have time to do that. It's time for citizens to move from town hall to the streets. It's time for citizens. So we engage with government from cooperation to confrontation. We work with INEC, with the current INEC logistic framework as our organization, ActionAid. And we sit on the round table to do conversation, to do all this kind of engagement. But again, if we are not getting the kind of cooperation, the kind of engagement we require, the onus is done on us to make sure that we push for things that will make them listen to us. The Constitution enables us. I was in National Assembly during this protest, and guess what? When we were doing the protest, we were careful not to be seen working with politicians. Why? Because the political parties or the politicians will then say, oh, all of these people are being partisan because we are civil society. So we're careful not to be seen with this party or that party, so we'll be able to separate ourselves. But at this point, all Nigerians need to come out. It's going to be a case around, how do we get the National Assembly? How do we get the executive? How do we get INEC? How would an INEC official finish his or her service and get rewarded
with an appointment in government? We need to ask ourselves that question. In my organization, this organization, if you lead the organization for 1 year, you don't have any consultancy, anything to do with the organization, that should be what we will be doing with INEC. So the INEC will not be jumping around themselves, trying to please the ruling party. So those are the actions we need to take going forward.
Mr. Mamedu, Mr. Kwame Adamalekun, enough is enough, isn't it?
You're fine, indeed. All right, thank you. I'll say two things. So voter participation, all-time low. The only way to build that back is trust in a system. And INEC, Professor Amupitan, you have a bit. Mr. Balogun, please, if you let him listen, please. Professor Amupitan, you have a lot of role to play in building that trust. Because given where we are, you then came up when you spoke, and as someone said, you laid out a lot more about the issue. First of all, we have an Electoral Act that I'm not sure you have seen, but none of us in this room has seen the signed copy. You've seen the signed copy. Fantastic. Now, it's not public. So we're talking about, sorry? I should apply for the Electoral Act.
Apply.
Now, sorry. Now, the chairman of the House, should be gazetted exactly, public. Now, this is, sorry, so we don't lose my time. This is very, very symbolic of what we're talking about. Where a sitting member of the House of Representatives, that's chairman of the Electoral Committee, is telling citizens in a room that we should, no, and I'm talking as a citizen. And exactly, Prof is correcting you precisely. Thank you, Prof.
A public document.
It's a public document. So if we're sitting here and a member of the House of Representatives that was elected to represent a constituency, i.e. citizens like me, is telling me I have to apply for a law that's going to determine how I participate in an election to choose people like you, it speaks to Antiobi's point that if the legislators are the ones that we're expecting to make this thing make sense, this is what we see. Moving from Mr. Balogun, I'll go back to Professor Amupitan. And this shows why this is a challenge. And I hope you understand it. You have a copy as a regulator, but the person who we elected and we're paying their salary to represent us in the National Assembly is telling us we have to apply for it. So the conversation that we've had here is been based on drafts that we've seen. Now, part of the challenge and the points that you made that we have time, there's still a lot of errors. And I'm not sure if you've gone through it. And you'll notice that there are things from typos to the point that Dr. Amadi made about delegates, if a political office holder wants. So there is still time to amend those things. And in addition to that, because there was speed, because the normal process will be before the president signs it, you should have had a copy to read. So you could have marked off all those errors and say, oh, before you sign it, this contradicts this contradicts this. But we were in a hurry to sign a bill to an end. Right. Anyway, going back to this point. So that since we have time to edit these errors, the point about real-time transmission, again, in your explanation of it, sir, your sense of it is very different from our sense of the understanding of what that means. All we are saying about real time is that once you are done, you send it. And as the point that you made, the copy is still on the BVAS anyway. So while citizens want to see the IREV because it allows us to feel a part of the process and ensure it's transparent, for the purposes of collation at the ward, because the picture is still on the BVAS, that can be used to verify if anything has happened in between. So if we understand the intent of what citizens want, we simply want to make sure that there's a transparent process from the picture that is taken at the polling unit to what is then used at collation. That is the problem we need to be solving for. So if you are telling us that the proviso that the legislators have put that if technology fails is not a problem, and you then issue a guideline that explains this in clear terms and everybody understands, and then we get to the Supreme Court again, and they tell us that because it was not in the Act, it doesn't count. So let's take the time now, with INEC's help, and the help of citizens, and the help of opposition parties to get this thing done. We can do it. Mind you, there are 469 of them, including Mr. Balogun. Some of them are allies, and they've stated clearly what their position is, like Senator Omer. And so there are not that many of them that we cannot engage as citizens to let them understand very clearly that we're setting ourselves up for failure